All right, no need to leave you hanging anymore. If you've been watching along and if you haven't gotten a chance to go check it out on CBSSports.com, let's throw it up on the screen on YouTube.com/cover3. The top 10 of the college football playoff power conference coach rankings. Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, two-time national champion, checking in at number 1. Ryan Day, fresh off getting his first ring, up at number 2. Dabo Swinney at 3. And then we get into the contenders, the coaches that are looking to add a little bit of hardware to the trophy case. Steve Sarkisian of Texas at 4, Dan Lanning of Oregon at 5, Marcus Freeman at 6, James Franklin at 7, Brian Kelly at 8, Kalen DeBoer at 9, Matt Campbell at 10. Any based on your wait. Oh, yeah, there we go. Then we've got 11 and 12. Kyle Whittingham at 11 and Lane Kiffin at 12 just to round it out. Let's go ahead and start there with that top dozen. Where, now that you see the consensus, or what stands out to you?
First, I will say that Kirby Smart was unanimous number 1. Nobody had him lower than 1 on their ballot. Ryan Day was not lower than 3 on anybody's ballots. Dabo Swinney was as low as 6th, but he still finished in 3rd. The bigger surprises, I don't know if there's any really true surprises here. I think that, we discussed this on Monday's show. It's like the top 10, you kind of know for the most part. Once you get past the top 8, I think, you see like DeBoer, Campbell, Whittingham, Kiffin. There's probably a little bit of surprise there, but everybody above that you kind of expect. I think the more interesting thing to me, or the most conversational thing to me, is that Marcus Freeman, who was 24th last year, not only climbs 18 spots up to number 6, but he passes Brian Kelly, who was number, I think, 4 or 5 last year. Brian Kelly was 4. So Brian drops 4 spots to 8, and he is surpassed by Marcus Freeman, the guy who replaced him at Notre Dame and who has seemingly had more postseason success than Brian Kelly to this point at Notre Dame than Brian Kelly has at LSU. So I think that's a very interesting conversation point.
We get a chance, because we do these every offseason, to overreact to single seasons of data when we come back to the table to fill out a new form, because the way that LSU cratered last year is an undeniable disappointment. And what Notre Dame did, bouncing back from the Northern Illinois loss, overcoming all of the season-ending injuries to starters and key contributors, they went on the run. I think I talked about this a little during the college football playoff when I had to rank coaches. I indicated myself, I said, when we fill out our new full power conference rankings, I will be having Marcus Freeman as one of my biggest movers up, because not only did he make it all the way to the national championship, but just look who the Fighting Irish defeated along the way. We'll talk about Curt Cignetti in a little bit, but he beat Curt Cignetti in the first round. He beat Kirby Smart in the quarterfinals. Goes on to beat James Franklin in the semifinals. That is having to go through the bosses, video game style, to be able to attain new status, and that status being a top 10 coach. I had Freeman at 6 on my ballot.
I had him at, where you at, Marcus? So hold on, I got to fix this real quick because it's on somebody else's ranking. I had him at 5.
Yeah. So. What about the Brian Kelly side of this? I'm right in line with the consensus here. It looks like I'm at 8. Looks like you're at 8 too.
Yeah, his very solid consensus on Brian Kelly. Nobody had him higher than 7. Nobody had him lower than 10. So it's like one of those things where you understand what he's done. You understand that while Marcus Freeman is having a lot of success at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly laid a pretty solid foundation at Notre Dame for him, because Notre Dame, before Brian Kelly got there, the Charlie Weiss era, all that kind of stuff, it was in a very bad place for a very long time, to where Notre Dame was kind of a joke for a while, because it would be like they would start every year ranked and everybody would be like, why? Just because it's Notre Dame. And then they would go, 7-5 or sometimes 3-9. And it was just a really bad thing. So Brian Kelly still obviously gets a lot of credit for that, but his time at LSU has not been what you'd want. Like, he had a Heisman winner at quarterback, but he couldn't really take advantage of it. He had Malik Neighbors at receiver, but he couldn't really take advantage of it because the defense has been so god awful these last 2 years. And I think that when you think of LSU and you think of the recruiting footprint, you think that they should be able to put together a pretty solid defense just by accident, by recruiting kids in their own state. You would think they've got NFL players everywhere along the lines, but they just haven't done it. So his reputation is suffering. But at the same time, if LSU is in the playoff this year, guess who's going to take another jump in the rankings again next season? It'll be Brian
I mean,
Kelly.
but there's also a limit. I mean, he's not going to get, unless they win the national championship, he's not cracking the top 3.
No. Nobody's cracking the top 3 until they win a national title. Like if Texas wins it this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Sark passes Dabo, especially if Clemson kind of doesn't have a great season, like a lot of people expect.
Right. The Brian Kelly high floor to me, and this is, I guess, just my own way that I view it, is also backed up by how long he has been good at so many places. I mean, I understand that we've got a large age range of the Cover 3 podcast. We are getting older, but the word Tony Pike does mean something to someone somewhere. Like, I mean, he has been at multiple stops winning double-digit games, like at a very high level. I didn't even factor in any of that Grand Valley State success, where he won forever before even starting to make the jump to the next level. He has just been doing this at a very high level for a very long time. While there have been dips, they are blips. Like, it is usually the issues are corrected pretty quickly, and he's able to get it back. Here at LSU, he has an opportunity, as the range of what people expect from LSU this year is win a national title, or, maybe be a big disappointment in a very crowded SEC. They got to do a better job in some of those biggest games. That was their shortcoming last year. Lane at 12. Again, another different kind of resume in terms of you can grab what you want to grab. I don't think I was the lowest, but I did.
You were the lowest.
I was the lowest on Lane.
You were tied with Will Backus and RJ, Richard Johnson, at having him at 21.
It was
Why do you hate Lane Kiffin so much?
It was very, very easy for me to put him up into that top 20 kind of group. I think that he ended up taking some tiebreaker losses along the way against some of the other coaches who maybe are being propped up because of doing more with less. I think he's done a great job with the transfer portal and being able to create winning at Ole Miss that it really hasn't been seen much throughout that whole program's history. I mean, if Lane keeps doing this, which it sounds like he could keep doing this if he wants to stay there, he's going to leave Oxford as one of the winningest coaches ever. And that is a proud program. But you still do have some spotty performances from time to time. You go and you get beat by Kentucky. There are a few spots where I was maybe knocking him and losing some tie breaks. To me, he's a 15 to 20 type coach. And I guess I ended up sliding him down with some of those tiebreakers. Let's see who I put above him. All right, great example. Do you know who's one spot above Lane Kiffin on my ballot?
I do, because I'm looking at it.
Lance Leipold.
Yeah.
Lance Leipold, Rhett Lashley, Kenny Dillingham. Like I was given a lot of bonus points for some of these do more with less, in a way that makes me a Lane Kiffin hater, apparently. But I see him as a 15 to 20 kind of coach. Not going to make an argument for top 15. Track record's too spotty, but without a doubt, sort of top echelon, top tier of the power conference levels.
Can I counter your argument a little bit?
Sure.
Because I've got him at 14.
All right.
You gave credit to other coaches for doing less with more. Is there not an argument to be made that the Ole Miss job is doing less with more in context of the SEC? Yeah. Like, I know Ole Miss has NFL players because they're an SEC program, but when you compare them and the resources that they have had in that football program to the teams that they are having to compete with on a weekly basis, you can argue that Lane Kiffin has been put in a spot where he has to do less or more with less than his competitors, and he's done a very good job of it. Ole Miss nearly got to the playoff last year. Now, they went all in the portal with that intention, and they fell short because they lost a freaking game to Kentucky, which is the kind of thing that, you can't be doing if you want to get to the playoff. But I've kind of done a 180 on Lane, not to where I consider him a top 10 coach, but where my estimation of him has gone up, because last year he did win a couple big games. And to me, Lane Kiffin's
Oh, and
Like,
he beat Georgia.
that's
Crap.
what I'm saying.
Oh, man.
My one qualm with Lane over the years had always been that whenever Ole Miss got to that point where they were playing one of those top teams, they always came up short. That changed last year, and the problem
Mhm.
was they lost to a team they shouldn't have. So still not a perfect resume, but I think if you want to look at the does more with less kind of argument, I think there's a solid one to make that Lane is doing that.
That's a very, very solid argument. I can rock with you on that one for sure. All right, let's bring up that second slide again. Everything just outside of the top 12. Lincoln Riley checking in at 13 from USC. Chris Kleiman, Kansas State at 14. Lance Leipold, as we mentioned earlier, 15 in the consensus. Josh Heupel at 16. Jeff Brom at 17. Kenny Dillingham at 18. Kirk Ferentz at 19. Mario Cristobal at 20. Kurt Signetti at 21. Rhett Lashley of SMU at 22, Brett Bielema at 23, Eli Drinkwitz at 24, and time slot champ Mike Norvell,
Hanging on at 25.
hanging on at 25. That's what was that, like a 15 spot drop for him? He was
Yeah,
close to the
he was
top
8
10
last
last
year, I
year.
believe.
Wow.
So yeah, he dropped 17 spots. He was 8 last year.
What stands out about this next section of the CBS Sports Coach rankings?
I'm surprised Lincoln Riley is still that high.
Yeah.
He was 4 2 years ago. He dropped to 10 last year, and now he only drops 3 spots. I thought he would have dropped further than that. I didn't think he was going to fall out of the top 20 because I know that it is easy to look at what he's done at USC and how things ended at Oklahoma. But he did go to the playoff 4 straight years at Oklahoma. And I know the last time he did so was 2020. And the way things work now, 2020 seems like a lifetime ago. But there are very few coaches out there who have that on their resume. So that kind of boosts him when you get to this point. Like you said, once you get past the top 20, like you were doing the thing with Lane Kiffin, he was 15 to 20. You have tiebreakers. You moved him down to 21 based on some of those tiebreakers. 4 playoff appearances are going to win a lot of tiebreakers when it comes to that tier of coaches. So I thought he'd be top 20. I'm surprised he's still at 13. I do think if they have like another 7-8 win ass season, he might fall very, very far next year. But that was one of the interesting spots. I was not that surprised to see Kenny Dillingham take a jump because I know how big recency bias is when it comes to putting these things together. I was surprised he jumped 46 spots to number 18. I thought he might be in that 25 to 23 range at the end. For him to jump to 18 surprised me a lot. But let's see, Kenny's highest vote was he was in 7th on Brandon Marcello's ballot. So he was a top 10 coach. And then that's the thing. There's a huge range on Kelly. He was as high as 7th on Brandon's ballot. He was low as 50s on RJ's. So it's like, it's in RJ's is one we were talking about the other day. He waits till you have a larger sample size before he starts truly bumping you up, which is why Kurt Signetti was also very low on his ballot. But I was surprised by that. Other than that, nothing too surprising here. I think that this is just kind of like a tier of coaches outside that top tier. This is like the second, and it's whatever order you want to put them in. I think there's solid arguments to be made for each. Mario made a big jump from 35 last year up to 20. I did wonder if he was going to make that large of a gap, like close the gap like that, simply because of the way Miami was last year, where the defense was still pretty terrible and they were in a whole lot of close games, messing around with teams that they shouldn't be messing around with. But unlike the year prior when they were in those games, Mario didn't make any dumb decisions that ended up costing them the game. So maybe that's why he got more credit for it this year. But
I was going to say, like, when they lose because he's not kneeling, it's at Mario's fault. But when they lose because the defensive backs are just totally out of position, and then Mario fires the defensive coordinator and makes a change, now all of a sudden you look at it a little bit differently.
And I do just find it amusing because last year Lance Leipold was a spot ahead of Chris Kleiman, which led to a lot of trash talk in the Sunflower State. And now this year, Chris Kleiman has jumped a spot ahead of Lance Leipold. So still going to be a lot of debate in the Sunflower State.
Well, they were both. I mean, the shout out to Petros, obviously. Kansas City's finest. Lance Leipold missed the bowl game.
Yeah, Lance was on the precipice of the top 10 last year, I believe. He was He was 12th last year, so he drops 3 spots. Kleiman dropped 1 spot.
Did I kick? Oh man, I kicked Kleiman down.
Yeah,
Ugh.
you did. You were the Kleiman hater.
Oh,
You were the low man on a lot of guys. You did not win hater of the year, but you were in the running.
We'll do some full data analysis to be able to do some accountability. All right, what about other biggest movers up? We already mentioned Kenny Dillingham. We already mentioned the jump up that we saw for the jump up that we saw from Marcus Freeman. What are some other notable risers in the rankings?
Rhett Lashley jumped 23 spots from 45 last year. You see him at 22. Kurt Signetti dropped 22 spots from 43 last year, up 21. Kalani Sitake, who just missed the top 25, he finished at 26 yesterday. He climbed 23 spots. Brett Bielema climbed 13 spots from 36 last year up to 23 this year. So yeah, there were a lot of coaches that kind of made big jumps, and I think this is the tier. Like when you get to that 20 to 50 range, that's where you see so much movement every single year, because that really is like a horse of a different color kind of situation where it's like, I like the brown one, I like the gray one. So it's a lot of nitpicking, and that is where we'll get to it in a bit. That's where my Big Ten glazing came in. Because like if you look at my ballot, the top and the bottom, I'm pretty much the same on all the Big Ten coaches in those 2 tiers compared to everybody else. But when you get to that middle range, I was giving the Big Ten coaches a little more leeway than maybe some ACC coaches, because I feel like they play a real schedule. There aren't no Wake Forest or Boston College on their schedule.
I mean, you seen what they've been doing in the portal up there in the Big Ten? Come on now.
Yeah. So so that made me a bit of a Big Ten homer. But yeah, I think overall the ratings or the rankings make a whole hell of a lot of sense, even if you don't agree with every single spot.
What about the big tumbles?
The biggest drops. You want just in the top 25 or all together?
Let's go all together, because then it includes coaches that were in the top 25 last year and then might have fallen out.
All right, here's some coaches that were in the top 25 last year that took humongous drops. Let's see. Sonny Dykes dropped 13 spots from 22 to 35.
That's interesting. Unless he was just still cashing in on old credit last year. I think Sonny Dykes said if I was to do plus minus every single season, I thought he did a pretty decent job with the Horned Frogs last year.
I thought Sonny Dykes did a Sonny Dykes job. And I just think that getting to the title game a couple years ago kind of inflated his ranking.
Agree.
Because I feel like, and we talked about it again, this is not hindsight. On this show, we spent a whole hell of a lot of time talking about the horseshoe that was lodged firmly up TCU's ass.
Yeah.
And they got away with it, and then reality came back the next year. Not saying you have to give any of it back, but it was true then, and it's true now. Mark Stoops, 20th last year, fell 16 spots to 36 this year. A bit extreme to me. I think his overall resume says he's worth a little bit more than that, but apparently not all of our voters agreed. The biggest drop of any coach was Luke Fickell, who last year we had 17th. He dropped 23 spots all the way down to 40.
I mean, you talk about losing tie breaks because of what is fresh in your mind. Wisconsin's drop off has unfortunately been laid at his feet when it comes to these rankings. Fair or not, we'll determine it here in the next season or two. But that's we're looking for places to blame for why Wisconsin ain't Wisconsin. Which I don't know. It might be because Illinois is up. It might be because you've got like Oregon in the league now. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Wisconsin ain't Wisconsin, including you don't have the Big Ten West anymore. But Wisconsin ain't Wisconsin, and I think that's in these rankings that's being put at Fickell's feet.
Yeah, and I think the decline started before he got there, so I don't think it's on him. I think he was brought in to fix it, and he just hasn't fixed it. And I think another part of it that probably impacts his ranking is these are Power 4 coaches. That's who we're ranking. Fickell's success came outside the Power 4. He was at Cincinnati while it was in the G5. If you look at his time at Wisconsin, and then you toss on his 1 year as an interim at Ohio State, it's a 500-ass resume, which is not going to get you a lot of respect in these rankings. So he took a tumble. Another coach who took a tumble, he was 16 last year, fell 15 spots to 31, Dave Doran. Chip, as the Raleigh expert, what's going on there?
Oh, I think that it is that's absolutely fair to be able to look at the let me see. They are not outright failures, but they are certainly missteps with the way that things have gone in terms of NC State, uh, the MJ Morris situation. So then you try with Brennan Armstrong and Robert Anae. You end up having a really tough break when it comes to losing Grayson McCall to a head injury. I, the you feel like you're okay eventually, but the defense has dropped off too, and that's where they've kind of made their bread and butter. It feels as though the whatever window there might have been, it has kind of come and gone. When they had Tony Gibson as the defensive coordinator, when they had Peyton Wilson, Tanner Engel, when they had NFL players along the defensive line, offensive lines, like that. Those teams that won 8-9 games, I think that there's a little bit of frustration within Raleigh, and maybe that sense has sort of leaked its way out. Dave Doran's a really, really good football coach. The sport is changing, and he has a fork. How about this? Dave Doran's got a fork in the road right now. Dabo faced it too, and Dabo's just decided, like, Dabo has doubled down on Clemson's identity, and it seems to be working. And I think that right now, after taking a ton of transfers last year and having need to beat Carolina to get to 6 wins kind of results, the home loss to Syracuse, the home loss to Duke, the home loss to Wake Forest. I don't know if we gave Dave Doran the truth serum, I think he would say, hey, I tried this portal stuff because everybody was telling me I got to do this portal stuff. Well, I didn't like the team that I got when it was just a bunch of portal stuff. So we've got a real ideology war going on between NC State supporters who are willing to give money to let NC State go shop the portal, and maybe a coach and a program that got to that level of consistency because they were a development program. And they would, build up to that point and have guys around for a while. So they didn't need to reinforce the message every single spring and fall camp because the message was sort of built into the building. And I think that loss of identity is worth at least like taking a step back and reevaluating the entire body of work.
Well, speaking of coaches who are at like forks in the road, although I think this one's just been staring at the fork, giving it the finger for a couple of years now. Our other coach that took a big tumble from the top 25 last year was at number 15, fell 19 spots to number 34 this year, one Mike Gundy.
Woo!
I think a lot of what you just said about Dave Doran can also be applied to Gundy. And I've been on here. I think the sport has kind of just passed him by. And I don't think it was, I don't say that in a way that I think that he couldn't have adapted. I just think he's chosen not to.
Right.
Like he's being very stubborn, which I know if you've paid attention to Mike Gundy, it would be a shock to find out that he was being stubborn about anything. But
I mean, you'd say that. I mean, he was like, now I told him, tell your agents to quit calling. Okay. It's fall camp now. Tell your agents to quit calling, like that. He's I had Gundy at 36 on my ballot.
I had him at 51. I was the hater. Of the last year's top 10, only 3 coaches fell out. We've gone over it a little bit, but I will just drive that home here. The top 10 coaches from last season to fall out: Kyle Whittingham fell from 6 to 11. Mike Norvell, as we discussed, went from 8 to 25, and Lincoln Riley went from 10 to 13.
All fair downgrades, and I love Kyle Whittingham, but he's another coach who might be ending the sort of end of the line, and he gets to decide, exactly how it ends up going. Let's see, where did I have Whit?
You had Whittingham at 9.
9.
You were the high man.
Okay, so I do love Whit. All right, let's do it.
The low man was Brandon Marcello, who had him at 37, which, Brandon, I don't get that at all. I mean, if not for Brandon Marcello, Kyle's probably still in the top 10.
Listen, I understand if you want to question the decision-making of playing a deceased human being at quarterback and continuing to lead on the entire football world, okay? But listen, it's not all his fault. There's a lot of pressures around that program.